We're opening up the mailbag to talk about Celtics who can have long careers. Isaiah Thomas moving the Maine Celtics and superstitions and more right now on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Thanks to Blockbuster Brand, it's holiday season. Drop Drew in the mix. And 3 from KP, no, we not on the Knicks. Flushing competition like Al on Giannis. Juice and Big Zeus, still Beantown's finest. Banner 18 going up in the rafters. Watch the C's game in Locked On after. Karalis on the breakdown. Clutch like a tip from D. White on the breakdown. John on the mic, documenting domination. Matter pen a back bay, it's all C's nation. Rain and Jay's how it started, raising banners, how we finish. Locked On Celtics pod, home of the winners. Big.
Hey there, welcome back to the Locked On Celtics podcasts right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. We're 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is the Wednesday show until, 2-3 weeks from now, and then we go back to 5 days a week. So make sure you're subscribed, watch the show on YouTube, have some fun with me 3 days a week until we go back to 5. It's more podcasting than you're going to find anywhere else. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts. And like I said, on YouTube. I'm John Karalis. If you're new to the show, I used to play a long time ago. And I've been covering the Celtics team for like 20 years almost. And now I'm doing it for Boston Sports Journal. And I've also written a couple of books. Built Different is the newest one. Find it where you get your books. In stores everywhere in around Boston, celebrating the Celtics championship. All right, we're opening up the mailbag. Later on, we'll get into superstitions and some fun stuff. We'll get into are the Mavs overrated? We'll talk about Isaiah Thomas. We'll talk about moving the Maine Red Claws, the Maine Celtics. But let's start with Andrew, who asks, are there any current Celtics that you think can play late into their 30s, like LeBron, KD, and Steph? Is there anyone on this roster that you worry will suddenly be out of the league in their early 30s? Well, I assume we're not talking about Al Horford, who is playing into his late 30s like LeBron, KD, and Steph. Now, Al is playing into his late 30s like a normal player, like a normal, really, really good player would play into his late 30s. LeBron, KD, and Steph are different level. Al is playing great basketball still at 38. He'll turn 39, I believe, this June. That's just incredible that he's still able to perform the way he's able to perform. I'm assuming we're talking about the younger guys, and I do think that Tatum has the best chance because he's the best equipped to kind of shift his game, and because of his size, because of his both height and like broad shoulder, like what he can have a wide base, he can put on some muscle and play 10-20 pounds heavier and be a more of a just front court player, not a perimeter ball handler. He can into his late 30s become Al Horford. He literally could become Al Horford and be a guy who is just rebounding and outletting and spreading the floor and being a 5 into his 37th, 38th, 39th, 40th birthday. Like, he can be all of what Al Horford is and continue to play very deep into his career. He's been the most durable of the Celtics. He very rarely gets hurt. Now, I'm going to say knock on wood, but he's the guy that has the best chance to go from kind of out above the break perimeter guy to down low kind of guy. The rest kind of depends. Like, I expect Jaylen Brown to have a very long career. I don't know if he goes past 36, 37. Like that, I think his career, he's just less suited for shifting positions. His position is kind of what it is. So once skills decline, I don't know that he can go a different route, but he's also that's also 10 years from now. So there is the possibility that he can go. But obviously, I think the lesson here is you have to be extraordinarily good. And it's kind of like driving a car, hitting the, keeping your foot on the gas. And then once you go over the hill, how fast were you going? How good were you? And that lets you kind of determine how far you can cruise down that backside of the hill. So Jaylen will probably have a long career. I think Tatum's probably going to be a little bit longer, like I said, because of his size. I think somebody like Derek White is, has the potential to kind of fall off a little bit because he's not going to be anything besides a one or a two. I mean, he could end up being like a spot up 3-and-D guy that carries him through a little bit. He's really good. But he's not going to put on a ton of weight. He's going to rely on his speed and quickness. And if that starts to go away and he can't do some of the chase down blocks and he can't quite defend the way he would normally defend, I think there is a potential for maybe a Derek White. I'm keeping this to like the really good players. I'm not saying like Sam Hauser. Sam, I don't know if he's going to play till he's 40, because if his shot is just good, then yeah, he could play till he's 40. He could also be out of the league at 31. Who knows? It just depends. But again, if you're not so good to start with, right? If you have more of a niche, or you're just more of a role player, chances are your career is going to be shorter, because when your skills tend to erode, then you fall off the end of the roster pretty quickly. Holiday is already in his 30s, so he's going to keep going. And look, Derek White is what, 30? So I don't know how much longer he's got. He could be, 4 or 5 years from now for 35. That's about when most careers end. So who knows? But I think it's a very safe formula to be like, the better player you are, the more likely you are to have a longer career. Lorenzo says, with the talk of New Orleans splitting up Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, it's reminiscent of the debate about splitting up the Jays. And obviously the best case scenario happened with winning a championship. What could New Orleans or other teams looking to split up their stars learn from the Celtics? Which factors or lessons should be kept in mind when developing stars? It's tough, Lorenzo, because it depends on the two stars. And why people started talking about splitting up Jayson and Jaylen, I think it was a little bit more of an antiquated mindset that they do play very similar roles. And I think in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, maybe they would have been split up because there's overlap. And it used to be that there were very defined roles for players. Your point guard was the passer. He organized things. Your shooting guard was the shooter. Your small forward did a little bit of everything. Your power forward was just a smaller version of your center. And that's basically what it was. Everybody had a role. The big guys were rebounding and setting picks and with their backs to the basket. Maybe they spotted up a little bit, but that was their role. Your small forward could do a little bit of everything. Your shooting guard shot, your point guard passed, end of story. And because Jayson and Jaylen are both kind of shooting guard, small forwardy kind of guys, that it would have been tough to define. Okay, is Jaylen going to be the 2? Is Jayson going to be the 3? But Jason's playing a little bit more than a 2, and Jaylen is strong enough to play the 3 and could maybe guard up to that stuff is antiquated. They worked together because of the team that was built around them. New Orleans is talking about splitting up Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson because Brandon Ingram is not, it's just not working with those two. And it's not working the same way Jayson and Jaylen weren't. I would never say that they weren't working together. They were getting far. They just weren't getting over the hump until this past season. Brandon and Zion, that's their styles are a little too um, in competition with one another. It's not overlap. It's Brandon Ingram doesn't like to shoot three-pointers. He wants to live in the mid-range. Zion needs somebody who spaces the floor. He can't space the floor himself, so he's not going to space for Brandon. Brandon's not going to space for him. They're both caught in kind of the same spot. And the players that they've had around them aren't complementary at all. At least Jayson and Jaylen can spread the floor. Jaylen could be, if Jaylen's driving, Jayson can be in the corner or at the at the 3-point line, and vice versa. So they didn't get in each other's way, where Ingram and Zion kind of do. So the factors for keeping two guys together is, are they getting in each other's way? Are they holding each other back? And I never thought Jayson and Jaylen were holding each other back. People were just saying they don't work together because they weren't winning a championship yet, which is a whole different thing. Developing stars, the lessons for developing stars, it's the only thing I can tell you is there is no formula for developing a star player. Each player is different. Some guys you can ride, you can get on them, you can scream and yell at them, and they will respond. Some guys go into a shell if you scream and yell at them. And you have to figure out who's who. What does each player do best? How can you get each player to do what they do best while helping their teammates? And a lot of it is, how do you get them past some of the things that they, as young people, just young players in the league, emphasize that shouldn't be emphasized? How quickly can you get those habits broken? And so there's no one way. There's no single way. How Jayson Tatum was handled is not going to work for, I don't know, Victor Wembanyama, let's say. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But just because a formula worked for LeBron or KD or Steph doesn't mean it's going to work for Jayson or Jaylen or Wembanyama or Anthony Edwards or any of those guys. So it's different. It's all I can say is it's different. And because the Jays didn't get in each other's way, there was room for them to work together. Sometimes players do get in each other's way and keep each other from growing. And that is the case, I think, in New Orleans. Let's come back. We'll talk about the Mavs. Are they overhyped? That's coming up next. Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors knows, just like we know in Boston, that the formula for winning a championship, passion, drive, patience, that's also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, tons more. So whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay's guaranteed fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time, or you get your money back. It's that simple. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Thank you for making Locked On Celtics your first listen every day. Go check out Locked On NBA. Make that your second listen. I have recorded the Locked On NBA podcast with Jake Madison today. I did that first, then I came to Locked On Celtics, and you want to listen to both. Locked On NBA is going to be the ESPN survey. We talked about players, what they talked about, who's going to be the MVP, some interesting Jayson Tatum conversation there, who's going to be the champs, why it's the Celtics and OKC, very neck and neck in this survey. Let's go check that out. And then KG and Anthony Edwards yelling at each other, basically. So fun stuff. We are in the mailbag, which you can submit johnKaralis.com/mailbag. JohnKaralis.com/mailbag. That's how you submit your questions. It's the only way I'm going to use the questions because it's the only way I can keep them organized. Sorry, that's how I work. So that's where it is. JohnKaralis.com/mailbag. Like Josh did, who says, I was thinking about the West and are the Mavericks being overhyped and maybe just caught fire at the right time. The Grizzlies are a better team. We forgot they were the second seed back-to-back seasons, not 2 years ago. Everyone thinks Denver is possibly better than the Mavs or the Thunder, T-Wolves, possibly the Suns. That would leave the Mavs around the Suns in a battle for fifth. Are the Mavs overrated? Well, I think there's potentially some overrating of the Mavs because they made this run to the finals. They caught a couple of breaks, but they also made some moves that enhanced the team, that really did enhance the team. And then that was midseason, right? The moves that they made that kind of helped them catch fire. And then adding Klay Thompson helps with their offense for sure. It's a guy that you really still can't help off of quite the way you need to help off of somebody. So they are good. They obviously made it to the NBA Finals. So we do have to respect the fact that they made it there. They know what it takes to get there. Now, are they the number one team in the West? No. Are they the top three? Well, it's important to understand that it's probably going to be 3 or 4 games that separate 1 through 6 in the West. Like we're talking about series like tiebreakers all over the place. So are the Mavs, I'm not looking so much of, the Mavs could be in a battle for fifth, but you could look at 2 or 3 games that you say, if this went a different way, they'd be competing for the 2 seed. I just think it's going to be, I do think there's a little recency bias with the Mavs that I think people are assuming that, well, Luka got them there once, he'll do it again. But I also think the West is super tough, and the Celtics kind of also gave a blueprint on how to beat them. And that could hurt the Mavs as well, because you can still attack Kyrie, you can still attack Luka, and you'll be able to attack Klay Thompson. So there are places to go to attack them. And in the series, it may just be a little bit more difficult. The competition is a lot better. And in that survey that I talk about on Locked on NBA, lots of people are putting a lot of stock in the OKC Thunder. So yeah, Denver could be really, really good. Kind of depends on Jamal Murray. If he can kind of get back to being Jamal, then Denver could be a much better team. And the Mavs could be sitting there, fourth maybe. So, but it'll be tight. They're still really good. Aiden says, I grew up watching the Big Three, and that's what got me into Celtics basketball. Now he's 22. So when he says the Big Three, he's talking about KG, Paul, and Ray. After they disbanded, I still followed, but it was when Isaiah Thomas came up that I really bought in and considered myself a diehard. What's your general overview of that era and thoughts on my favorite player ever? Well, what Isaiah Thomas did in Boston was truly magical. Absolutely unbelievable. His 2-year run is one of the most amazing runs that a player has ever had in the NBA. Like, it's up there with some of the, now, not like Wilt Chamberlain or like that, but he is right there in back-to-back seasons. The things that he did, the things that he was capable of, the way he was able to will himself to making shots in every fourth quarter. It never mattered if the Celtics were down 10 or 12 or 20. Isaiah Thomas always gave them a chance to win. Brad Stevens absolutely gushes to no end about Isaiah Thomas. Loves him. You bring up Isaiah Thomas, he will say, when a GM They don't always like talking about stuff. Uh, they don't like expressing things to the media. They're very guarded. You ask him about Isaiah Thomas, he'll sit back. I mean, you might as well give him a cigar and a drink because he will sit there and talk, 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 talk. Loves Isaiah Thomas. It's a shame what happened to Isaiah. I really wish he could have gotten paid. I really wish the injury never happened. I wish a lot of things didn't happen to him over his time in Boston. But that era was incredible, amazing, and clearly two of the best seasons in Celtics history. Jarrett asks, what are the chances the Maine Celtics become the Worcester Celtics? I love Portland, but seeing that Bob Cousy statue outside the DCU Center gave me the idea. Wick's final gift to Worcester. Red Sox invested in Worcester. Will the Celtics? Well, they've committed to Maine. So this version of Celtics ownership will not move the team. Will a new ownership come in and have a different decision? Look, everything's on the table, I think, with new ownership. So would the team move from Portland to Worcester or anywhere else around the general vicinity to maybe make it easier, maybe play to bigger crowds, maybe who knows? I do want to give the folks in Portland, Maine, a ton of credit. They support the team. It's very popular there. There's no reason to move the team. There may be some financial gain in a bigger venue, but also it's not going to sell out the bigger venue all the time. It may draw bigger crowds because they're just a bigger municipality. Worcester will draw people from Boston, will draw people from Providence, will draw people from, southern New Hampshire, Vermont, even. So there is in Western Massachusetts, there is a little bit more of a draw because it's more centrally located, whereas Portland is tucked up all the way there in the Northeast. And it's not a far drive from Boston, but it's just going from Providence to Portland stuff, So there are advantages. I'm not saying the new ownership would do it, but there are advantages to moving the team to somewhere like Worcester. But I haven't heard any buzz about that. And I think the team is very happy with how the Portland thing has worked. Also, keep in mind that the cost of living in Portland, Maine is a little cheaper. The team is spending less money there to operate the franchise than it might in a place like Worcester, where guys would be living in more expensive places, right? Even apartments. It's just a little bit different. And I think the cost of operating the team would be greater in a place like Worcester, and that plays into the equation because it's not really a money generating venture. It's more of a talent venture. So there are financial reasons to keep them where they are, right? So we'll see, but my answer is probably no. All right, let's come back with a question about sports betting, superstitions, and people getting personal questions and questions about retired numbers. It's all coming up in just a second. Let's get back to the mailbag here. Again, johnkaralis.com/mailbag. Adam asks about my thoughts on sports betting suddenly becoming so dominant in sports media and the league. He says it seems like everyone has jumped into the deep end without considering possible consequences. And, this is a good question. Now, I say this fully acknowledging that I get money from sports betting. FanDuel is a sponsor. I benefit financially from them being a sponsor. I encourage people to use FanDuel. I am careful to say that I encourage people to use it responsibly because I treat sports betting like I treat alcohol. Um, and in the same way that people can overdo both, uh, and both are potentially extraordinarily dangerous, right? Alcohol consumption uh, done in excess and it can be addicting, and people have to be careful, mindful of their potential addictions. And they do. I encourage people when they use something like FanDuel to gamble responsibly. You have disposable income, right? If you get your you work hard, you do what you do, and if you've got $100 left over that, I have disposable income where I sit there and be like, okay, I have this $100 that I'm going to spend on. Maybe I'm going to go out and have some drinks. Maybe I'm going to go like buy, you know, some new clothes or something, or I could just throw some money down on a game. And okay, you can do that. And as long as I'm spending what I can spend within my budget, it's cool. But I also understand that leagues pushing it and making it so readily available makes it very difficult. And that is where the league has to have some responsibility, where having it so readily available, like if you're an alcoholic, you don't go to bars, right? You just say, okay, I'm not going to go to a place where they're going to shove it in my face all the time. But you want to go watch a basketball game, you should be okay to go watch a basketball game. Like, yeah, people are drinking around you, but yeah, it's fine. It's not the same thing. And you also don't want buzzers at your seat being like, okay, it's a timeout. Who'll score the first bucket? $5. And you don't want it to be so crazy available that you're kind of like reaching into people's pockets. So it is a balance. And I do encourage people to gamble responsibly, and be able to have important conversations with each other about, hey, if somebody tells you, hey, I'm worried about you, listen. Like, don't. I know it's tough to be not to be defensive about that, but when somebody says, I'm concerned about you, then you do have to listen. If somebody tells you, I'm concerned about your drinking, or I'm concerned about your smoking, or I'm concerned about your gambling, that's a time to stop and take stock. So I think we're adults. We are free to do what we want with our money and our time. And so if you want to have a drink, have a drink. If you want to bet on sports, bet on sports. But I also understand that there are parameters that need to be put in place. And this is the early stages of it. And because we're in the early stages, some of it might go too far one way. There might be a reaction where it goes too far the other way. And we will find some middle ground. Um, and I do have genuine concern that there are people and families that are going to suffer in the meantime, and I don't want that. So I hope for a solution to some of these problems soon. And I think places like FanDuel and others have, some level of responsibility to make sure that they're giving a product that is something an adult can enjoy, but isn't over the top. And I think they do a good job of that. And could they do things better? Absolutely. Everybody can do things better. And we're figuring that out as things go. Josh says, what's your strangest superstition, or what was the strangest superstition that you have seen before games? I don't believe in superstitions. But I understand when it comes to sports, when it comes to athletes, that joke that was at The Office, I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. I do understand, like, if you've done something and you've performed well, you want to continue doing that thing. You kind of like, what did I have to eat that morning? What did I have? You know, whatever. I didn't have a superstition necessarily, but I knew every time I got a pregame nap, I felt good about how I was going to play that night. Mine, I came out energized, and I always felt like I had my best games after a pregame nap. Is that superstition? I don't think so. I just kind of felt good. Um, I I know that there were people who were superstitious. When I was in Greece, I initially my wore number 44 in college at Emerson, and when I was playing in Greece, they did the very European numbers, like two through 16, I think it was. And the bigger guys got the higher numbers. So I was picking from 13, 14, 15, 16. Well, 15 and 16 were gone. And I said, hey, look, there's no 44, so I wanted 14. So I took 14, and another guy came in and saw that only 13 was left, and he lost his mind, absolutely lost his mind. And to the point where I said, just so you shut up, I threw a few more words in there. Uh, Here, you take 14, I'll take 13. So I wore 13 in Greece. Um, and that's it. But as far as other superstitions, um, I know Jason Terry wore the other team's shorts the night before, like when he went to bed. So if the Celtics, when he was playing with the Celtics, they were playing like the Hawks the next day, he'd wear like Atlanta Hawks shorts, like legit, not something that he just picked up at Dick's Sporting Goods or something. He would get a real pair of Atlanta Hawks shorts, and he did that, which is a weird superstition. I think KG had peanut butter and jelly before every game, and which, that he brought the peanut butter and jelly craze to the Celtics. There, I'm sure some other ones. Players can be extraordinarily superstitious. I personally don't think that wearing a pair of shorts or whatever influences the results of whatever, but it's more calming your anxiety and building your confidence. And if some stupid little thing, trinkets, activity, whatever, gives you that confidence heading into the game, then fine. Is it the trinket? No, I think it's the confidence. But you can say it's the trinket that gives me confidence. Fine, whatever. As long as you're playing well, go. That's how I feel about superstitions. Finally, Max says, do you know what happens when the Celtics retire every possible number because that reality looks like it's happening very soon? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've talked about this. I think for the single digit numbers, there's nothing wrong with putting a 0 in front of the digits, right? Robert Parrish wore 00. Jayson Tatum is wearing 0. Why is 0 the only number that you can do that with? Okay. Why can't you wear DJ wore number 3? Why can't somebody wear 03? It's a different number. It's a 03. Why not? I mean, at least that gets you a few of these numbers back, right? You get 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. Well, at least there's 5 more jerseys. So you get 5 more numbers out of there. So, and 7 will end up being retired at some point. So 07 will be available. I'm sure somewhere along the way, these other 8 and 9, who knows? But that's my solution. People have suggested that you can do a decimal point in between. I think honestly, what may end up happening is they start reissuing numbers with only the absolute pinnacle legends of, Bill Russell and Larry Bird and Havlicek, and like, those numbers maybe don't get reissued, but a lot of these other numbers start to get reissued with a Hall of Fame kind of number, like attached. Like they just do a separate kind of Hall of Fame type of thing. I think that's the most likely scenario. And Max asks one little personal question: am I crazy, or did you get a bunch of arm tattoos recently? I did. You see them as I wave my arm around. Sometimes I cross my arms when I'm listening. Um, I am building out a sleeve for people who are watching on YouTube. I have the Greek god Dionysus here, who's the Greek god of wine, revelry, and then on the inside I've got Apollo, who is like the Greek god of everything and very serious. Apollo's very serious. Dionysus is very playful, kind of like whatever. He's kind of like, he's got a mischievous smirk, and he's spilling his wine. And Apollo is looking at him like, what the heck are you doing? There's been a lot in history between the dichotomy between policies, that those have been used as symbols of kind of like man's nature, man's desire to have fun and, party and drink, and also the need to be very serious. And I think I see these as very big sides of my personality. So I am building out a sleeve entirely of Greek gods that kind of, I think, are my own kind of personality. And I do enjoy revelry and partying and having a beverage. So Dionysus is my guy, but also Apollo and his need to do a lot of things, and his uh, he's god of music and the god of um, so much. He's god of the sun, pulling the sun across the sky in the chariot, and he's had huge roles. He's involved in everything in Greek mythology, basically. So, and he's the twin brother of Artemis, and my mom's name is Artemis, and so that's important to me as well. So yes, a couple of new tattoos. Shout out to the folks at 1001 Troubles in Warren, Rhode Island. That's where I'm getting my work done. Amazing, amazing, amazing artists, including Danny Ryan, who you might have seen if you watch Ink Master. I forget what season she was on, but she is part of that crew. They're all incredibly talented. So I feel lucky to be getting this work done. So I'm going to keep going back. As long as I have space, there is space on my arm, that more is going to be happening. So eventually you will see more stuff added, because I love tattoos. I just love them. And if you have tattoos, you know that once you get one, it's kind of hard to stop. It becomes, talk about addictions. My two addictions right now are basketball and tattoos. And I'll just leave it at that. Thanks for listening, everybody. Appreciate the questions, even the personal ones. They're fun. I save them for last, because people generally aren't listening by this point anyway. Thank you for listening. I appreciate you all very much. Friday's podcast will be a crossover with Locked On Knicks, because we're starting to look forward to the season, and the Knicks are one of the biggest competitors. So we'll do a crossover. We'll play that one on Friday. And so subscribe wherever you get your podcast, watch the show on YouTube. And I would love it if you share the podcast, spread the word, tell everybody they should be listening to and watching the Locked On Celtics podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.